Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Going Card Reviews. I'm going to call this series Reviews. So, I wanted to talk about The Crash on Netflix. I just watched this not too long ago. And to go over kind of an overview of what this series is about, um, it focuses on a crash uh, of involving three high school students. I guess they are graduates. They just graduated, hadn't quite gone to college yet. Um, and what happened is there's a girl called Mackenzie Shrilia, I think's her name. And then there was Dominic Russo, Dom Russo, which he was Mackenzie's boyfriend. And then Davian Flanagan, who was the passenger of the back seat. So what had happened was they had claimed Mackenzie had and there's footage of this all over, and I highly recommend if you haven't seen it to watch this. In the crash, there's footage of Mackenzie. I'm pretty sure they say she was well. I guess they pulled her out of the driver's seat, so she was driving. Without a doubt, she was driving. Let's just leave that one where I don't really have any doubts about that. But what happened was at some point, she just hits the accelerator and doesn't ever hit the brake. She just keeps hitting the accelerator. They turned off onto this road that was, I think, about maybe 2 miles long or a mile and a half or something like that. And at some point, some of the security cameras of the businesses around catch their car, and it's going. I think they calculated at the first one that they showed, the car was going like 90 miles an hour, and then it hits this T, and I think maybe the school is there, or it crashes into basically a brick building, and does some damage to the brick building, but it demolishes the car. And Mackenzie was driving, and they say she just hit the gas and just drove it straight into that building. Now, I have some problems with that because looking at Mackenzie, she's tiny. She's a tiny little girl, and her boyfriend Dominic was sitting in the passenger seat, and he's like 3 years older than her. Now, granted, he's also kind of a smaller guy, but then you have Davian in the back seat who is a football player, um, which I think he may have gotten an injury, which would have limited his remaining football career. Because I think he was supposed to go to college on a scholarship or something. They'd mentioned it, but they don't really focus so much on Davian or Dominic. The whole thing focuses on Mackenzie as she was the one driving. Now, all the outside influence stuff, I want to discount most of that. I mean, yes, is Mackenzie kind of a vapid little social influencer? Absolutely. Absolutely, she is. Posting all of her, and not that I'm too much different because I'm posting this on Netflix, not Netflix, but YouTube. And she posts a lot of videos and stuff on YouTube. But they go over all of that. She was heavily into weed and mushrooms, but the weed and mushrooms, I don't think make you more aggressive. In general, I don't think none of that makes you more aggressive. Um, but the main problem I have with this theory of Mackenzie just driving them all into a wall is that why didn't why didn't Dom or Donovan do anything about it? I mean, I just had this flash of insight at some point where I just had this image inside the car where Dominic, who was in the passenger seat, I just he's not wearing a seatbelt, and Davian in the back seat is not wearing a seatbelt. But Mackenzie is, and that's why it saved her life, is because she's wearing her seatbelt, and the other two were not. So first of all, always wear your seatbelts. Um, but second, why didn't they do anything about it? Especially Davian in the back seat. I mean, unless this was a suicide pack, which I mean, that could have been. If that was the case, that would be why Davian and Dominic did nothing. And if that were the case, I think Mackenzie would remember that and she would share that. Um, so I'm not quite sure if that is a valid scenario or not, but I had this flash of insight that all of a sudden I'm like, which is more likely to have occurred? This tiny little girl sitting behind the steering wheel of the car, and the two boys who could probably overpower her. One of them being a football player in the back seat. I could see him yanking her back under the seatbelt. She was small enough. I think he could have lifted her out of the driver's seat completely, to be honest, and prevented her from driving them into the wall. I think he could have done that. And Dominic could have yanked the wheel. He could have put that thing in park. Why didn't he do any of that? Like, it doesn't make sense to me. And all of a sudden it occurred to me, I actually don't think she was the one that had her foot on, well, she did have her foot on the accelerator. But I think what happened was Dominic took his leg, moved over the center console with it, and smashed her foot to the ground at the same time pinning her back and putting his other hand on the steering wheel and just driving like mad. Now, there are questions I still have to that. Why didn't she fight back? Now, she is a younger, weaker girl. Um, but I think he could have totally overpowered her for a minute or less than that. It was like 30 seconds, I think, while the car sped up and went into the wall. There was, and they used computer data to show that the steering wheel moved a little bit, and that the car got knocked into neutral for a short second and then back into drive. Very, very briefly. Which to me would indicate, Mackenzie kind of was trying to grab the wheel and jerk it, but he's so strong, he's just not letting her do anything. And with this hand, and then with this hand, he's pushing her even harder back, and she's able to somehow shift it from drive to neutral and somehow trying to do all these things. Now, the one thing that they mentioned that I still can't discount in that scenario is, why didn't she hit the brake on that at all? And again, why didn't Dominic do anything from the back seat to, or not Dominic, but Davian? Why didn't he do anything to Dominic, who was doing this? So, there are still some questions with that theory of mine. But the two main questions I would have really would be for the cops and the forensic teams. And one question would be, what position did they find Dominic in the car? Without his seatbelt, he could have been all akimbo, but really the forward momentum would have really kind of stuffed him into the floor panels below the glove box on the passenger side if he was completely there. But if he was straddling, it probably broke all of his ribs and his pelvis, and I mean everything in the same. He probably even cracked his skull, and then he was probably diagonally kind of akimbo because he would have bounced off, and the car was just smashed, and it looked like it just stopped. Like it may have bounced off a little and come to rest, about 10 feet from where it hit the building. So they went from 100 to 0 like that. And physics, an object in motion stays in motion. That 100-mile-an-hour body would have hit the dash and all that. Um, now, the other question I would have would be for the cops would be, did you guys check Davian, his system? Did he get roofied, or was he just completely wasted in his sleep? And some people are heavy sleepers, could have slept through it all, right? But I'd imagine Dominic and Mackenzie are fighting back and forth and yelling at each other until Dominic has enough, and I I think he's the one that really would have been able to do that and prevent her from stopping the car versus the other way around. If Dominic didn't want to die and wanted to prevent her from driving the car into that building, I think he could have done it. I think he could have pulled that wheel to the side. I think he could have put that into neutral or park or even reverse, had the tires spinning backward in there, dropped the transmission out of it even. I mean, there's a lot of stuff he could have done that he just did nothing. Um, so that's very, very suspicious to me that Dominic nor Davian did anything. And so I'd want to know, did you know the other thing that would convince me that she did it was if they found some sort of sleeping agent or drug in both Dominic and Davian. Like, did they have like one more shot before they got in the car and she spiked it, or I don't know how she would have done that. But if there was some sort of agent that incapacitated both Dom and Davian, she definitely would be the guilty party, in my opinion. Um, she has already been found. Well, go watch the documentary. I think you know what I was going to say, but I think as you're watching the documentary, you get a pretty good sense of what the judgment and everything is because of the people that they're interviewing and who they're not interviewing and all of that. I mean, I think it's pretty obvious. So, and this happened back in basically around this time, August or July 31st, 2022. I was going to say August 1st, but we're at August 3rd here. So that is the crash in a nutshell. But I wanted to give my 2 cents on it. I wanted to kind of review that. Um, I don't know. It just seemed to fit what happened better if Dominic had, you know, I think he could have just totally put his leg over there, smashed her foot down on the accelerator. She was in those slippers. It almost looked like that slipper had like an indentation when I was looking at it. I could be wrong, but it almost looked like it had something, an indentation, and would have been on top of her foot. Now, all the lacerations, all the bruising, everything else that he would have done to her would have actually been covered up by the accident. And she's since healed, so you can't go back and I mean, if they have photographic evidence, they might be able to take a look at some of that. But I I th- I think that's more likely as though it happened. It was just this, all of a sudden this realization hit me like, oh, he could have just did this. Boy, that's more likely, from the strengths and weaknesses of men and women, what probably happened. Like all of a sudden I just realized, oh, this is what happened. Now again, all of this I'm going to um, just say this is all my opinion. I don't have any evidence of this. And maybe I'll even put a disclaimer at the beginning of this, but that's my opinion as to what I think happened during the crash. Just wanted to get that out there, and you know, probably this theory is I would imagine somebody else has already come up with this, so I don't even know, um, you know, what could have been um, already gone over in court, or and we don't see very much of the trial. We don't know everything that was said during the trial. And when you watch a documentary, everything is given its own slant. So they always make some, whether they're meaning to or not, they always kind of put their slant on it, whatever they think is going on. So it just seems to be that way anymore, instead of letting things speak for themselves. But, or what the things that they chose to show do that for them, instead of just showing kind of everything. Which sometimes that would be too long, and they'd have to do like 3 or 4 videos, and it'd be boring and nobody'd watch. So I understand this is entertainment, so they need to get people to watch. And I did. I enjoyed it. I would recommend it. I would say everybody go watch it. But yeah, that's my opinion on the crash. Go watch it. And yeah, shout out to Zeducation, actually, of all channels. He had a meme on there of the, like, every time I think I find the worst documentary or a woman that's the worst, Netflix comes out with a new documentary, and this was one of the 4 faces on there. So I'm currently watching through all 4 of those. So maybe more to come, but I don't really have any other comments like this one for any of the other videos. So or other documentaries. So that's what I got for you on the crash. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you on the next one. Until then, be good to each other. Have a great day.